So with that said, I'm very honored for our next guest, the gubernatorial candidate for the Democratic Party, Jennifer McCormick.
So first of all, thank you, Tom, for having us and having this event, and thank you to all of you, because I know how busy we are right now at this time of the year, whether you're trying to wrap up school or wrap up whatever your commitments are, so thank you. I also have to brag on everyone on this panel. Representative Miller was always accessible to anyone who wanted to chat with him. He also is always a champion for public education. And I have quickly learned, when I was at the State House for 4 years, you never take that for granted. And so we have Noah Smith and Jennifer Mathias, who represent you well. I mean, they are constantly a champion for not only your school system, but your community. And again, knowing what's happening with school boards across the state of Indiana and also in this county, it's been a challenge. And so when you've got people who are doing it for the right reason, and who can keep that lane of, let's keep focused on what we're supposed to be doing as board members and as educators. Again, you've got to tell your friends and family, you've got to have people like that on the school board. I mean, I could tell you stories from across the state of Indiana that are frightening about what's happening across the state in school boards. And then Rep. Giaquinta has been amazing for a long time for us, and so we need to keep him in that office, and we need to make sure we're supporting him. But thank you to all of you for what you do. We just do not take it for granted, and I certainly mean that, and I think everybody in here recognizes that of you. So it is going to be an interesting 2024, and I think we started out by the same old, where we have seen complete chaos and disruption on purpose. And it's constantly, whether it's in healthcare, or whether it's in education, or whether it's in law enforcement. I watched it at the State House, and I thought, is just this the way it is? And what I quickly learned is, yes it is. So many of you in this room knew when I ran in 2016, I ran as a Republican. And many of you in this room did not like me in 2016. And I kept saying, pay attention to our actions, pay attention to our actions. And when I got into office, I took values with me as far as I had been an educator. I taught for 10 years. I was a local superintendent, a principal. I taught kids for 20 years that character mattered, and I meant it. I taught kids forever that we had to empower each other. We had to take care of each other. I also am very fiscally responsible, very fiscally conservative. Call it whatever you want, I don't care. But I also believe in community. And when I got at the State House, I had my eyes wide open. It was a big shock to me, and I'll be honest with you. And I've told people I was pretty naive. I went in and I watched behind that curtain, and I heard conversations that I really wish I'd never heard before. And I walked away from that thinking, we are better than this. This cannot be the way we are governing. And we opened our doors when I was in the Department of Education. We were Ellis Island of the State House. We were serving anybody who needed help with bills. We were serving Hoosiers. We were elected for everybody. And I quickly got called up to the State House principal's office and said, knock it off. And I'm like, no. Because that's the way it should be. We should be helping anybody who needs help with education to help all kids in the state of Indiana. So that went oh so well for me for 4 years, but I wouldn't do it any different because we are there to serve everybody, and everybody means everybody. I'm going to tell you some numbers, and the reason why I'm telling you is sometimes I go into areas where I don't get real data-ish, but we live by data, right? This room understands data. Right now, you will need to understand 24.2. That is how much money, $24.2 million, Allen County lost in one school year to private schools. And that doesn't mean private schools in Allen County. That means private schools in the state of Indiana. $24.2 million of your tax dollars that you are assuming are going to your community schools went right out of your county. $24.2 million. I also want you to keep in mind 2,200. That is the amount of teachers that we have openings for today. And that number is going to grow and grow and grow. Because we are now at another big number, 1.6 billion. What is that 1.6 billion? That is the total number of dollars that have gone away from traditional public schools to private schools. $1.6 billion. That is a lot of money. And then people ask me, why are all these little private schools popping up? Because when you think of private schools, usually in your area, you think of schools that are affiliated with probably a church. And many of them do a good job, so I'm not going to sit up here and bash a bunch of private schools. I just don't think our public dollars should go fund them. However, I will tell you story after story after story of what's popping up across the state of Indiana are not those kind of private schools. They are the ones in the back of a taco stand. They are the ones in an abandoned building with no heat, no books, no lights, no teacher. It is a money grab, and they're growing. Because, as Rep. Giaquinta said, there are no guardrails. They would call us and say, you know, there's a school happening and it's literally in the back of a taco stand, and there are kids and they say that's their school, and they're calling us because they're worried about educational neglect. We would get the calls about a school in Muncie, no heat, no books, no water, and they would get calls, and we would have to take our team out, and sure enough, we would have to leave and call every official known to man about it's not a safe environment. And those are just a few of the many examples of what is happening with your tax dollars. That's not good for kids. That's not good for communities. It's certainly not good for the state of Indiana. If we're going to have choice, there's got to be quality guardrails on it. There's got to be transparency. There's got to be accountability. There has got to be the understanding that if you are, as a state, funding a school, that there are some expectations that it is a school. Parents are very trusting. And we know as traditional public education, we're not getting it all right. I have yet to find a teacher going, we're perfect, we're good. We have room to improve. But the stuff we're seeing out there is scary. It is scary. The other thing too is I was a special education teacher for the first part of my professional life. And I will tell you, many of our private schools, as soon as you walk in that door, if they let you in, you lose your protections in any federal law, unless they want to play nice. And many of them do not, because it's expensive. So when they walk through that door, you're either giving it up, or you have a very much of a lesser look on those wraparound services. The other thing too is our kids come to us, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, where they have to have wraparound services. The day of just going in and worrying about academics is gone. We have behavior, we have social, we have emotional, and for people who tell me that is not our role, I remember the Republicans would say, Jennifer, get out of that. That's a home issue. It's not a home issue. It's a Hoosier issue. And we have got to help each other out. We have got to make sure we're providing those wraparound services, because in the end, we're going to pay for it one way or the other. We are going to pay for it. We are also one of the few states where over half of our counties, think about this, half of our counties in Indiana still do not have affordable child care. And you're in an environment where you've got options. Now, you may not have a lot of options because you probably have the list of waiting to get in problem. I go into counties, they don't have an option. So when I'm talking to a mom or a dad, they're like, we're trying to get into child care. So I'm going to see if my neighbor will take my child so I can get to work. And I'm thinking, can you imagine? I'm a mom. They don't even know that neighbor. And they're just hoping for the best, because that's their option. Half of our counties have been deemed a child care desert. Now you tell me that does not affect when they walk in that kindergarten classroom. You tell me that the lack of universal pre-K, which is one of the few states, it's 2024, we don't have universal pre-K. Because the upstairs in the State House, minus these gentlemen, will tell you that is a home issue. They need to be at home during that time. Their parents are usually working. They need options. We need to get them into a situation where it is structured. Everyone would benefit from that. Everyone. Universal pre-K. That is not asking too much. It's not a mandate. It's like, let's offer it, let's go. And I promise you the majority of families would participate. But when we're staring at, we're taking money, we don't have universal pre-K, we really don't have good child care options, and we are not funding public education, that is a recipe for a disaster. We have to have an educated and a healthy state.